The 411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that affect us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
Welcome to the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. I'm Beverly Taylor. We have embarked on a big project doing multiple podcasts on human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking. And the other mission is to really bring awareness, spread the conversation about this issue, and also look at the effect of sex trafficking on its victims, the trauma that it causes. Well, today we are focused more on that trauma aspect, and we have a really special guest with us. Our topic today, how trauma affects the brain, body, and human behavior. We have a lot to talk about. So I invite you, when you're hearing us, things are coming into your head, you have comments, questions, or whatever, send them our way, because we definitely want you to be a part of the conversation and be a part of this space. Joining me now, again, I say, a really special guest, Simmone Kilgore. She is a trauma therapist, and believe me, she knows what she's talking about. Like I said, we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Now, you are going to break down in layman's terms so Beverly can understand neurobiology of trauma. Big phrase. What does that mean?
So I always say I don't want people to be afraid of the phrase. It's all about us, you, me, everyone. We all have our own nervous system. And neurobiology is just the study of that, how the body is affected by whatever. But when you add on the word of trauma, the neurobiology of trauma, it specifically means what happens in the brain and to the body once someone has been affected by trauma.
And I want to be clear, because we're focused on sex trafficking, human trafficking. But when we talk about trauma, that can be anything.
Of course.
We've all had some
all
aspect
had
of trauma.
some aspect, from a loss of a family one, a pet, a car accident, loss of a limb or finger, sexual violence, domestic violence, just traumatic events. And so I always say I believe everyone has been affected by some type of traumatic event or events.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when I think about it as a kid, divorce.
Yes.
When my parents got a divorce, that was very traumatic
Very
for
traumatic.
me. Yeah.
And what do you do with all of those emotions?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I realized at this age that some of that from back there has affected me here.
Sure.
And now it's being the light bulb, and it's like, okay, let me go back, make sure this little girl here is healed, so this woman over here will be okay.
Absolutely. And without the connection between what we're doing now and how our life and our past has affected us, we kind of roam around unclear, unknowingly damaged, unknowingly hurting others, unknowingly unable to manage our own emotions and human behavior.
And a lot of times, and a lot of times wondering, why did I say that?
Why?
Why am I acting like
why
this?
do I feel overwhelmed when this happens?
Yeah.
We have to try to make the connection. And so the neurobiology of trauma is about understanding the connection.
That's huge. Okay. So you said the nervous system. So what all is being affected here? Cellular, muscular, what?
Cellular, muscular, the flow of blood, how your body and your cells remember. We have what we call cellular memory. And so it's often, I describe it as, if I smell something, it might remind me of the 7th grade lunchroom, or someone's walk might remind me of someone's walk, or a touch might remind me of a specific time I was touched inappropriately or nicely. A grandma's hands might
Right.
remind me of my grandmother's hands. So the connection of what we remember and how we remember it is circuitry. It's wiring of the brain and the memory and the body. It's phenomenal, and the body is designed to keep the memory and hold it in a place, whether we recognize it or not. It's there.
So we've got the blood flow,
Mm-hmm.
the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else? The behavior.
Human behavior. Sure. So talking about your example of maybe childhood divorce and whatever you might have felt internally or your behaviors in that moment for survival,
Mm-hmm.
because that's all it's about, right? Um, you may find yourself as an adult woman feeling some of those same emotional connections to something, but not be sure about why you feel what you feel. It's a
Yeah.
very connected way. Our body is brilliant. We are designed brilliantly. And if we just pay attention
Yeah.
to the body, um, and almost like call a thing or get help when we lack understanding, we all would be a lot healthier.
That's true.
Mm,
That's true.
Mhm.
Some people have a hard time
mm,
asking for help.
mhm.
Let's go back to looking at that neurobiology and taking it from the lens of a sex trafficked victim or survivor.
Sure.
What are some of the things that might be playing into that or happening to them?
I can talk about that and the connection between the neurobiology. The brain, again, is phenomenal. We store memories in a part of the brain called the hippocampus.
Mm-hmm.
And normal memories for all of us are stored, and they have characteristics like organization, time, date. A recall. It's like a filing cabinet.
Okay.
And we can recall where to find normal memories, your first birthday party or your first kiss or your parents' divorce. There's parts of things that happen in the brain and the hippocampus when it's a traumatic event that the memories aren't stored the same way. They're fragmented, they're mixed up, they're shielded and put away from us in a way that we can't find it. So it's like looking in a filing cabinet and I know I put that there,
Yeah.
but I cannot find it. Or I'm looking through my organized memories, my normal memories, and something pops up. What happens for survivors of human trafficking, oftentimes, due to PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
due to trauma and pain, is they have lots of disorganized memories and thoughts. Our hippocampus is connected to other parts of the brain, which connect us to our emotions, behavior, flight, fight, or freeze, giving us information on what to do. So oftentimes survivors have fragmented, lost memories
Mm-hmm.
that are too painful to bring up. If they've been involved or affected by trauma beyond human trafficking, so maybe in childhood, maybe earlier than the trafficking began, they may have just been brought into an environment where every part of their life is fragmented and painful and feels disorganized,
Yeah.
unable to connect. So it causes you to have human behavior that also looks like that: fragmented, disorganized,
Mm-hmm.
not connected to anything. Um, and so it is absolutely overwhelming for survivors to process what it means to heal. What do you want me to do with that? How do I organize this?
Right.
Where do I find it?
Where do I start?
Where do I start? Where do I start? And it's fearful. We're asking people to take a risk, to heal, to
Right.
trust that they can, to trust that the body is set up that way.
It's funny you would say that. I did a talk to a women's group not that long ago, and I was talking about sometimes you're at this point you need to go back because the past is ruling this,
Yes.
and you need to go back to revisit that past, to
Absolutely.
figure all of that out.
Mhm.
So anyway, I went through, some things that have happened in my life and,
Mhm.
what I had to do and how this 50-something-year-old woman had to go back to this 12-year-old girl and talk to her
Mhm.
as this 50-something talking to the 12-year-old and
Mhm.
saying, it wasn't your fault
Yes.
or, it's okay.
Yes.
I know it was painful.
Mhm.
Just all those things
Mhm.
to help get me back to where I need to be.
Mhm.
So anyway, I had that talk. After it was over, these ladies started coming to me.
Mhm.
And I remember one lady who told me that what I said spoke to her.
Sure.
And she needed to go back
Hmm.
and revisit that young girl.
Mhm.
But she said, Beverly, I'm scared,
Mhm. Terrified.
terrified.
Terrified. It's terrifying.
So this thing is real.
It is real. It feels heavier than anything you've ever carried before.
Yeah.
Asking people, I was just saying to a friend the other day, we so casually say, you need to go get it together,
Mm-hmm.
or you need to heal, or you need to get over it. We're so casual with it.
That is so true. And I've heard that many times.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And I don't take it casually. When people enter a space where I'm working as a trauma therapist and trying to help them recognize that the body is phenomenal and that they're strong enough and that they have the supports and that they can heal, I have to understand as a clinician that it looks a certain way for them and a different way for me. And I'm okay with that difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with not knowing everything. I'm okay with not having to be the driver. So the first thing I say is, you're the driver and I'm the passenger.
Yeah, yeah.
And what does that look like? And knowing that along their journey, it's going to be a lot of bumps and bruises, flat tires and running out of gas and the engine goes out. We got to get that replaced and whatever it looks like. There might be a pause. There might be people running away from it and coming back to it. It's really up to them.
Yeah.
It's not for the clinician to dictate. It's not for family members to say, get over that, Beverly. It's not for neighbors to say, this is the way I did it, and you should try it
Right.
too, that way. It's wonderful to get helpful, sound, loving advice, but then having the allowance to make your own choices
Mm-hmm.
in the healing journey. Not all trauma survivors, not all human trafficking survivors can take the same route to heal. It's just, sometimes I'm asked, how do people heal? It's just the simplest question ever, in their own way.
Right.
In their own way.
Yeah. And then you have somebody you really love, you want to help them, but their perception is not your perception.
And you want what's best for them so badly, you just want to force it on them.
Yeah.
Because you love them.
Yeah.
And I get it. And so even explaining that to survivors is, this person loves you so much, they want what's best for you. What does that mean for you? Can you accept the love and still carve out your own way? It's a lot of work. It's tons of work. People leave sessions absolutely exhausted.
I bet.
Mentally and physically exhausted.
As a therapist, I bet you do too.
Oftentimes. Oftentimes, yes.
Wow. Because
Mhm.
we're taking baby steps in this process.
Mhm.
It's a little step and
Mhm.
sometimes a half step
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
get to it.
There's definitely steps to what we call trauma recovery and the way that we study it as clinicians. And even in those steps that we have, found it to be clinically efficient and validated and evidence-based in terms of research, it works.
Mm-hmm.
We know that there's variation even in that.
Right.
It looks different culturally. It looks different
I didn't think
in
about
terms
that.
of your
Yeah.
gender,
Mhm.
your age, your environment, where you live, where you return to. Are all the folks in your home and family also going through their own trauma? Is it a
Probably.
safe place to say I'm healing?
Wow.
It looks different for everybody every day.
Do you ever run into it where somebody's trying to get in this healing process, but maybe somebody close to them really they don't want them to.
Constantly.
They don't want them to change.
If I risk healing, if Simmone risks healing, I'm probably showing up differently
Yeah.
each and every time I get a new revelation, or I learn a new safe coping skill, or I learn a way of defending myself. So each time I could be showing up differently in the lives of those who love me, and it's confusing for them. I've changed. But it's really about me coming more into myself, learning more about who I am and my rights, what I want,
Right.
what I don't want.
Yeah.
And I can verbalize that now. And it's not always pretty for everybody else.
I can see the problem where that person in that healing process, they're growing, they're getting bolder,
Mhm.
and some folks around them are not used to that boldness. And
Yes.
that's a problem.
Yes. And really the boldness to me is a shining moment. You know, I
Yeah.
like to say delicious. It looks delicious on people. They look whole and healthier, and it's almost like walking towards what to use Dr. King's word, the promised land. Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
How do I walk into this and become, again, quoting Michelle Obama's book on Becoming? Do we want it for certain people, but not our loved ones?
That's
Do
not
I
fair.
want it for Beverly and then I don't deserve it?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people feel that.
That they don't deserve it?
Oh, sure. They've been told that their whole life. And every example and every part of their life, especially a survivor of trafficking.
Yeah.
So the work, early part of the work, starts with them understanding their own strengths and that they are just as deserving as any other human created, any other person on the planet. You are just as deserving. And so sometimes that's the first time they've ever heard that.
And I imagine that sometimes that's the hardest. It takes them longer to accept that.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm important.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
As we say, let's reference a time in your life when things were good. And sometimes people don't have a time in their life when things were good or better or easier or non-traumatic. We run into individuals that have never had that, ever. So the point of reference is where?
Oh, man.
Or I
That's
say,
huge.
what would you desire if you could have anything you wanted? What would that be?
What would it look like?
And they say, I don't know.
Mm.
And then that's a homework assignment, and they come back and they still don't know.
Wow. Okay. We have a lot to talk about.
Mhm, mhm.
I hope that you are getting a lot from this because I know I am. We're going to take a break and come back and continue this conversation. You are listening to the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. We'll be right back.
Human trafficking is a global issue that is happening locally. This is a problem that we cannot ignore.
Being so scared on that hotel bed and wish I had my mommy. Going back into that feeling of, man, what am I getting myself into?
She rests her head on the prison to which she's chained.
I'm standing there and I can't move. I can't go nowhere, I'm stuck.
Drug into this spider's web, and she can't untangle herself to freedom.
Him telling me how pretty I am and what I can do to trick guys out of money and what I need to do and how much money I need to bring back, and him making me change into different lingeries to take pictures of me to put me on Craigslist. Now I'm a product to be sold.
Beneath this ground we walk is a hell of movement in a forced direction. Gridlocked, traffic lights, sex, currency, bodies, stock, fear, monopolized, auction, blocks.
another job, he come another one, he come another one, and just being sold over and over and over and over.
Minds groomed to be immune to pain,
And you used to it, and you just lay there.
numb, desensitized, innocence, drained.
I went from that scared little girl, from in foster care, from being molested by my stepbrother, by my foster brother, till being a lonely little girl stuck in a house, so scared with my mother, to being trafficked.
Welcome back to the 411 Live. I'm talking with Simmone Kilgore, a trauma therapist, and we're talking about trauma and how it affects you on so many different levels. Let's just get right back into this conversation, because when we talk about all these things in the neurobiology of trauma and how it affects the nervous system and the blood flow and the whole thing, it's like that trauma rewires what
Sure.
was there.
Yeah.
And instead of going this way, you got stuff going this
Uh-huh.
way.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times we don't understand it.
Correct.
And it affects the body. But we're talking about the mind and the perceptions, and the way you see this is not how I see it, or this other person see, or not even the way you used to see it.
Exactly.
It's all rewired.
Exactly.
This is so deep.
It's too deep. It's too deep. It's too deep.
It's so when somebody comes in and they say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to change. I don't like this. I want to do that. Do you have to say, slow your roll?
Not so much in that way. I think all clinicians would love an enthusiastic person that walks in the space and says,
Right.
"Hey, I'm ready to heal," and that's really rare.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people come because the wiring that you mentioned is enough to make them feel what we say crazy. I feel unsettled. Nothing is going right. I can't keep a job. I can't gain weight. I can't lose weight. I can't sleep. I can't wake up. It's always an extreme of something that brings people into the world of counseling. It's a choice to say, I want to heal. And so people come in encouraged, but not always so enthusiastic, because what they've realized is, I think we talked before, getting to the point where you say, I'm ready, is turmoil in itself. So I understand the bravery that's walking in the room,
Right.
and the courage and the consideration it takes to get to the point where you say, I'm ready. And so that's when I have an opportunity to explain that I'm ready with you.
Yeah.
You're not alone. I support you fully. I'm not an expert on you, and nor do I pretend to be. I know a lot about the field of psychology and trauma and the effects of trauma on the brain, the body. But you are your own expert. And so together we come together to figure out a better route for you to have wholeness and well-being and mental clarity and peace. So we ask people to help us help them, period.
Before the break, we were talking about, taking those steps, those baby steps, those half steps. And one of the things that you mentioned was just grasping the fact that you're worthy, you're valuable. Getting that to sink in, because we were talking about perceptions and perspectives and different things that have been changed, and they're not thinking that anymore. So that takes time.
It takes time. Everybody's route is so different, but it takes time where you can work. So let me go back a little bit to what we talk about in terms of trauma recovery. And there's 3 basic steps. And like I said before, in those steps, there's a lot of nuances and changes that can happen pauses and starts and restarts, and so much information that it's overwhelming. So we have to slow down the process
Yeah.
of processing, right? And so the first step is always safety and stabilization, allowing the person to understand, specifically for survivors of human trafficking, I'm no longer involved in the actual act of trafficking. And so now I'm safe. Working through and understanding mentally and physically of being safe now when I close my eyes at night and it feels like I'm still in it, or I'm walking down the street, or I see someone, or I taste something, or I smell something, all the senses, going back
Mhm.
to your wiring question, going back
Mhm.
to how we're wired. Our memory and our brain is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So if I'm robbed on a certain street 20 years ago, every time walking, every time I drive down the street, my body will remind me of that incident
This is where it happened.
and the fear.
Yeah.
That's the delicious wiring. We get to remember grandma's hands and her sweet potato pie smell, just like we get to remember being robbed on a certain street. And so establishing an understanding of safety for survivors of trafficking is a process.
Right.
And so safety and stabilization look like uh, time allowed to get used to the newness, and stabilization, which can be impacted by understanding self-care, safe coping norms, understanding who our supports are. So I can have a beautiful husband and 4 kids who love me and adore me, but might not understand my need for safety and stabilization because they think that I have it already.
Right.
So I need to surround myself with loved ones and ask for patience in the process, but also a group of people who get it.
Yeah.
A therapist, a support group,
Right.
other survivors. And the second step is about remembrance and mourning. And what do people mourn? Some survivors mourn the security they used to have. Some folks are mourning something they never even had,
Wow.
ever.
Explain that.
If I'm robbed in my home tomorrow, um, there will be a process where I would have to go through the steps because that's traumatic,
Mhm.
of figuring out my own safety and stabilization. And once that's established, maybe I got ADT or the police are outside or I got a big dog, I don't know. And I work on ways to cope, locking the doors, checking my environment,
Mhm.
praying, meditating.
Mhm.
I don't know,
Right.
whatever you implement. Um, the second part of healing from trauma in remembrance and mourning, I could be mourning the safety that I felt prior to the incident.
Yeah.
And boy, is that a painful part,
Mhm.
to mourn love,
Mm.
connection, a time when you knew who you were. Maybe prior to trafficking, I was a different girl.
And I remember
And
it.
I remember her and I miss her and I want her. Um, you just mourn and you remember what it is you want and you need.
Mhm.
And that can be really, really, really scary for folks.
Yeah.
Really. And all of this, Beverly, can take time, and time looks different for everyone. Sometimes we're revisiting because oftentimes a lot of survivors that I work with, we establish the first part, maybe safety and stabilization. We're moving slowly on to remembering and mourning. So in the remembering part is the processing. What happened to me and why? So when I'm remembering and mourning, I'm processing how I got here, why I need help, Why didn't this person, that person help me? Why did this person allow this to happen? Why was this person so mean? Why was this person so evil? Why did I say yes? Why did I say no? Why didn't I run south instead of north? I don't know. But the processing, that's your work.
Yeah.
And it's an exercise of an allowance,
Right.
and things pop up at that time.
And it's like that tape recorder is just going in your head,
Mhm.
and those questions, or,
Mhm.
you're
And
trying
then
to
sometimes
brush.
you get to a point where you feel okay.
Right.
I'm doing great work. And then another traumatic event happens.
And you're back in that loop.
Right back.
Wow.
You have some tools. You feel a
Mhm.
little stronger sometimes. But I often work with survivors that are getting slapped with traumatic events so often that all we work on is safety and stabilization. We can't even get to step 2.
Wow.
Lots of times for survivors of human trafficking.
Because, one of the questions will be, well, how long will it take?
I never answer that. I can't.
Right.
First of
Right.
all, not all knowing.
Right.
And it takes however long it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that might look like back and forth, round and around. It's never linear. I do say that.
Mhm.
It's never linear, the approach to healing.
Right.
And I don't believe there's an end date. That's my personal view, though.
Yeah.
I don't want to stop healing.
Right. Me
I
either.
don't. I want to continue on
Yeah.
and it look as great as it can.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh man. And I can see that the circle, you're going and things are going well, you get a setback, you got to kind of regroup. But that third time when you get that setback, it could look a little different. All of a sudden, you are able to rebound a
Sure.
little quicker.
Sure.
So that's celebration right there,
Sure.
Baby steps.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful when you see someone connect to the fact that it's baby steps, it's slow, it's their route,
Mm-hmm.
and they can have a little victory here and there.
Yeah.
Well, look, this is what happened to me today, and this is how I got through this, or this is how I handled this. Oftentimes survivors are geeked and excited about healing. And as they're healing, they want to bring others along,
Mm-hmm.
other survivors, other friends, other loved ones. And it makes sense, but it's a lot to carry when you're trying to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Are you saying that they want to bring the others along? They want to help them.
Sure.
You're helping them, and they
Mhm.
want to help personally their friend based
Yes.
on how you help them.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oftentimes.
Okay.
Oftentimes.
That is a lot.
They want everybody to feel that good. They
Yeah.
want everybody to feel like I have a voice now. I can fight back.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. We can get out of this. We can be whole. We can be healthy. And it's like I just want to ring the alarm for everybody. And that's delicious. I get it. I get the
Yeah.
enthusiasm. But if you're helping people get there and you're not fully evolved in your own work, a lot of times it could be for naught.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not quite ready to carry the load of others as well. And any setback that the others can go through can then subsequently affect
That's
you
you. Yeah.
in a way that you feel like you've let someone down,
Mm-hmm.
or you didn't give them the proper tools, or you didn't help them. And it's like, slow your roll. You got so much to do just for you. Allow them, and it's good to share information,
Mm-hmm.
but allow them to work with a professional.
Right. Right.
And I know a lot of clinicians in the community, we push that. Work with professionals to heal.
Yeah. And that friend can see, you can be that example
Mm.
of someone in the process of healing. They can
Mhm.
see
They
the
can
work
see
that you're
you,
doing.
and you can encourage them
Yeah.
in that,
Yeah.
in your journey. As I heal, I will be attractive to others. But I still should say, how about you consult a clinician?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. How about you work with it? And we do that in every other area, the medical field.
Right.
We're not walking around trying to fix old people medically.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's something that we have to remember too culturally about emotional healing. And with all the social media and all the positive sayings and the positive memes and we all can have that, it's a phenomenal time to be alive when there's encouragement everywhere.
Right.
But it also sometimes waters down the amount of work it takes to unwire and rewire.
Mm-hmm.
The circuitry, the release of hormones that happens during traumatic events is such a part of the life of a survivor. The release of toxins and things that happen because that's what I've known so long. So my body has normalized abnormal events.
Yeah.
It has normalized it. So trying to get folks to release that, and that's all they've known. It's like me saying to you, Beverly, we're going to have a conversation in German right now.
What? Yeah.
From where?
What am I going to do with that? Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so asking someone to immediately just rewire and heal. I don't want us to forget that it is a phenomenal time to utilize positive self-talk and positive emotional sayings and quotes. We need to encourage each other that way. I'm not negating that. But it's another thing to think that is going to carry you through a healing journey.
Right.
In
Yeah.
simplest form, we're far more complex than
Absolutely.
a quote.
Absolutely.
We're far more complex than that.
And we read that sweet little quote and think, that's good.
I got
And
it
walk
today.
away
Mhm.
and forget all about it.
Mhm. It is the processing of the quote. And it's the
That's-
processing of the words and how they can impact my life. It's going to take more than daily quotes.
Right. Simmone Kilgore is her name. She is a trauma therapist. And we have ended this podcast. Went fast.
Yeah, it did.
There's still so much to talk about that we are going to come back for part 2. So I hope that you will join us for part 2 because we want to go into more on the steps of healing from trauma. Take them step by step by step, what that looks like, and get her to explain that a little bit more. I hope you're getting a lot from this because I know I am. And the trauma piece is just huge. It's huge. Whether you are a sex trafficking survivor or the child of a divorced parents or, you've been in a terrible accident and, different things have happened to your body. Whatever that trauma might be, this is important for all of us. This is the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. We, again, are focused on sex trafficking, human trafficking. We are a nonprofit organization, so if you would like to help us to continue to do what we are doing, spreading the awareness, go to our website, the411live.org, and we would greatly appreciate your contributions. We are all over the place. iHeartRadio podcast, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. You can see some of our past episodes, and we invite you to do that. But for now, I am Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk.